Welcome to Whispers of Crime. Today we're looking at a case where the last known images of a family are also the most mystifying.
Security cameras caught something terrifying. A family walked back and forth to their truck 20 times, like zombies, dead eyes, no talking, sometimes holding nothing, just empty stares.
And then what?
Then they drove into the mountains carrying $32,000 in cash and disappeared forever.
It's one of those cases that sticks with you. The more you learn, the less sense it makes.
That's right. The Jamison family disappeared October 8, 2009 from the Sandsboy Mountains near Eufaula, Oklahoma. Their bizarre final hours, captured on that surveillance footage, launched one of America's most baffling unsolved mysteries.
So October 8, 2009, the Sandsboy Mountains in Oklahoma. This is where it all begins.
Yes. The Jamison family's final hours caught on video spurred America's most baffling mystery. 15 years later, still unsolved. The truth may be darker than any theory.
So let's start with who this family was. Who were the Jamisons?
We're talking about Bobby Jamison, who was 44, his wife Sherilyn, she was 40, and their 6-year-old daughter Madyson. They were from Eufaula, Oklahoma.
Just a regular family on the surface.
On the surface, yes. But when you start to look closer, you see a family under an immense amount of strain. Their lives were complicated.
How so? What was going on with them?
Well, for starters, Bobby was disabled. He had chronic, really severe back pain from a car accident that had happened years before. This meant he was on, heavy prescription pain medication.
Okay, so that's a major physical stressor right there.
A huge one.
Yeah.
And then there was Sherilyn. She was battling her own demons. She'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and also suffered from depression.
So you have this convergence of chronic physical pain and serious mental health challenges all in one household with a young child.
Exactly. And it was clearly taking a toll. They had recently made the decision to pull Madyson out of school. They were planning a pretty radical life change.
Which was what?
They were leaving. On October 8, 2009, the day they vanished, they left home with the intention of viewing a 40-acre property they were interested in. It was out near those remote Sandsboy Mountains, near a small town called Red Oak.
And this wasn't just a day trip, was it? This was part of a bigger plan.
It was. They were planning to disconnect entirely, to go off-grid. Their plan, as strange as it sounds, was to live in a large metal storage container that they were going to put on that remote piece of land.
Live in a storage container with a 6-year-old.
That was the plan. It really suggests a kind of desperation, a psychological need to just flee from society, from their current life, from everything.
Which brings us to the money. They had an enormous amount of cash with them.
They did, $32,000. And it was all in cash, in a bank bag. This was reportedly Bobby's half of a $64,000 settlement he'd received from that car accident.
And they didn't trust banks, is that right?
Correct. Sources say they had a deep distrust of financial institutions, so they kept their money with them. That detail is important because it offers a non-criminal reason for carrying so much cash. The immediate thought is drugs, but this provides a plausible alternative.
So we have a family in crisis, physically and mentally, planning to flee society. But there was something else going on, something much, much stranger, this idea of spiritual warfare.
This is where the story takes a turn into the truly bizarre. The couple became convinced, absolutely convinced, that they were engaged in a kind of spiritual battle.
With what or who?
With spirits. Ghosts. Bobby confessed to their pastor, a man named Gary Brandon, that he was seeing spirits inside their home. He said he saw them on the roof.
And he didn't just see them, he wanted to fight them.
He did. He made an incredibly unsettling request to the pastor. He asked for special bullets.
Special bullets? For what?
To shoot the spirits, to kill them. It shows you just how real this was in his mind. He was desperate. Investigators also found out that he'd been reading the Satanic Bible.
The Satanic Bible?
What? He claimed he was looking for natural remedies or some kind of defense against these entities that were haunting him. He was looking for any weapon he could find in this war he believed he was fighting.
When you have two parents who seem to be sharing this same very extreme delusion, it makes you wonder about their psychological state. It sounds like something beyond just paranoia.
It does. It brings up the possibility of a shared psychotic disorder, sometimes called folie à deux.
Can you explain what that is?
It's a rare psychiatric syndrome where a delusion is basically transferred from one person to another. One person has the primary delusion, and their partner, who is usually in close contact and often isolated with them, comes to believe it too.
So in this case, it might have started with Sherilyn, given her bipolar diagnosis, and Bobby adopted the beliefs.
That's one possibility, yes. It provides a framework for understanding how they could both become so convinced of these things, so synchronized in their paranoia. It would explain why their reaction was to flee together rather than one trying to get help for the other.
And Sherilyn was showing her own bizarre signs, too, right? There was something about writing on that storage container.
Yes. On the side of that metal container they planned to live in, Sherilyn had spray painted these really odd, ominous phrases. Things about witchcraft, about death.
What did they say?
One of them read, 3 cats killed to date by people in this area. Witches don't like their black cat killed.
So she thought her neighbors were witches killing their cats.
Her mother believed that, yes, that the neighbors were poisoning their pets. Sherilyn took that paranoia and twisted it into something occult, something sinister. It all feeds into this narrative of a family under siege, not just from the inside, but from what they perceived as evil forces all around them.
So you have these incredible internal pressures. But this wasn't all just in their heads. They were also dealing with very real, very tangible threats from other people.
They absolutely were. Their life was not peaceful. When investigators searched their abandoned truck, they found an 11-page letter.
A hate letter, I've read.
That's what it's been called. It was written by Sherilyn to Bobby. It was filled with intense anger. She called him a hermit, said he wasn't living up to his responsibilities as a husband and father.
So their marriage was in serious trouble.
Deep trouble. A friend of hers later suggested that Sherilyn wrote these kinds of letters as a form of therapy and maybe didn't intend for Bobby to read them. But the words are still there. It paints a picture of a relationship at its breaking point.
Okay, so that's the internal conflict. What about the external threats? Let's start with Bobby's father.
This is probably the most concrete threat they were facing. Bobby had filed for a protective order against his own father, Bob Dean Jamison Sr.
Why? What did he accuse him of?
He alleged that Bob Dean had threatened to kill him and his family multiple times. In the filing, Bobby called his father a very dangerous man who thought he was above the law.
And there were other allegations too, weren't there? About his father's lifestyle.
Yes. Bobby claimed his father was involved with prostitutes, gangs, and drugs. He even alleged that Bob Dean had hit him with his vehicle back in 2008.
Hit him with a car.
That was the claim. And the timing around that incident is chilling. Just 4 days before that alleged assault, Bob Dean changed his will.
Let me guess. He cut Bobby out.
He cut Bobby out completely. And he named 6-year-old Madyson as the sole beneficiary. It suggests a really deep, potentially deadly feud, likely over money.
So his father is threatening him, is allegedly involved with gangs, and there's a financial motive. That's a powerful combination.
It is. And even though Bob Dean himself died of natural causes in December 2009, just a couple of months after the family vanished, that doesn't rule him out. He could have hired someone. He allegedly had connections to the Mexican mafia. He could have set something in motion.
And if that wasn't enough, there was another serious conflict. The incident with the handyman.
That's right. The Jamisons had a man living on their property. He was doing labor in exchange for rent because Bobby was too disabled to do a lot of the work himself.
But the arrangement went bad.
It went very bad, very quickly. One day, while Bobby was out, the handyman apparently cornered Sherilyn. He started making racist remarks about her Native American heritage and identified himself as a white supremacist.
And Sherilyn wasn't one to back down.
Not at all. She was known to carry a .22 caliber pistol for protection. She pulled it out, told him to get off her property, and as he was leaving, she fired several warning shots at his feet.
Wow. So she chased a white supremacist off her land at gunpoint.
She did. Now, the FBI did investigate this man and eventually cleared him with an alibi. But the incident itself establishes a clear motive for retaliation, a violent, racially motivated attack.
So when you put it all together, they're fleeing ghosts, a marriage that's falling apart, death threats from a father with alleged gang ties, and a violent racist who now has a grudge against them. It's almost impossible to know which threat was the one that finally pushed them out the door.
Exactly. Were they running from a real physical danger? Or was it all just fuel for a shared psychosis that was already spiraling out of control? The only thing we know for sure is that on October 8th, they got in their truck and drove away.
Which brings us to that surveillance footage.
Yeah.
It's the last time anyone saw them, and it's probably the most important piece of evidence in the whole case.
It is the anchor point for every theory. The video was from their home security camera on October 8th, the day they left, It shows Bobby and Sherilyn loading their white GMC pickup. But the way they move, it's just not normal.
The sheriff at the time described it as trance-like.
Trance-like, robotic. Those are his words. They made over 20 separate trips from the house to the truck. And what's so strange is that they often seem to be working against each other.
How do you mean?
One of them would put an item in the truck, and a few moments later, the other would take it out and carry it back inside. Then the first person would bring it out again. Back and forth, back and forth.
And they weren't talking to each other.
No communication at all, no gestures, no words, just these repetitive, silent, almost mechanical movements. They were undoing each other's work without any acknowledgement.
That suggests a complete breakdown in communication, in basic cognitive function.
It does. They also changed their clothes multiple times during the short period, and they would just stop, sometimes in the middle of the yard, and stare blankly into the distance for long stretches. It's profoundly disturbing to watch.
The first thought has to be drugs, right? Especially in that part of Oklahoma, meth is prevalent. And the behavior, that repetitive, obsessive activity, it sounds a lot like meth psychosis.
That was the immediate theory. A forensic psychologist who reviewed the footage said the behavior was highly consistent with methamphetamine use. The couple also looked very gaunt in recent photos.
But the evidence didn't back it up.
That's the problem. That's the first major contradiction. When police searched their home and later the abandoned truck, they found zero drug paraphernalia, no pipes, no needles, no residue, nothing.
And their friends said they had stopped using years ago.
That's right. They admitted to some recreational use in their past, but insisted they were clean. So that leaves you with a few possibilities. Maybe they took a substance right before they left and there was just no evidence left behind.
But
or
this wasn't drug-induced at all. This was the outward manifestation of that shared psychosis we talked about. This is what their mental breakdown looked like.
Exactly. It could be that their paranoia and their delusions had become so severe that it resulted in this complete behavioral shutdown.
There's another possibility, isn't there?
Yeah.
That they knew they were being watched?
Yes. Some have suggested this was a counter-surveillance tactic. If they feared they were being watched by Bob Dean's associates or by the handyman, they might have been deliberately acting erratically, making random movements to confuse anyone observing them or to try and smoke out a watcher.
So after this bizarre packing scene, they get in the truck and drive toward the mountains. And 8 days later, that truck is found.
On October 16, 2009, a group of hunters on ATVs stumbled across it. It was abandoned at a remote oil well site in Latimer County, not far from that land they were supposedly going to look at.
And the condition of the truck immediately presented a whole new set of puzzles.
It really did. It created the central paradox of the entire case. The truck was locked.
But the keys were where?
The keys were still in the ignition, which doesn't make sense. How do you lock the doors from the outside if the keys are inside?
Maybe with a remote or a spare key.
Possibly. But there were no signs of a struggle. No broken windows, no blood. Inside, they found their wallets, their IDs, their cell phones, their coats.
Things you would never leave behind if you were planning on being gone for more than a few minutes. Especially not coats in the mountains in October.
And then there was the money.
The $32,000.
It was still there, hidden in a bank bag stuffed under the driver's seat. If this was a robbery, the robbers were not very good at their job, leaving behind that much cash just. It argues against the whole idea.
But the most powerful piece of evidence, for me, is the dog, Maisie.
Maisie, their family dog, just a puppy really. She was found inside the locked truck. She was alive, but barely.
She was starving.
Severely malnourished and dehydrated. The investigators determined she had survived by eating old hot dogs left in the truck, licking up melted ice, and eventually by consuming her own feces. It's a horrible image.
And the family, especially Madyson, they would have never, ever willingly left her like that.
Everyone who knew them was adamant about that. Maisie and Madyson were inseparable. The fact that they left her locked in that truck to die is maybe the strongest piece of evidence that they expected to be right back. Whatever happened to them, it happened fast, and it was not part of their plan.
This points so strongly to them being forced out of that truck. But if they were, what did the perpetrators take? Because some things were missing.
Yes. Two very important items. First, Sherilyn's .22 pistol, the one she used on the handyman. She was known to carry it everywhere. It was gone.
The potential murder weapon.
The potential murder weapon. Second, a mysterious brown briefcase. In that surveillance footage, Sherilyn is clearly seen placing a brown briefcase into the truck. When the truck was found, that briefcase was gone.
And the sheriff had a theory about that briefcase, didn't he?
He did. Former Sheriff Beauchamp thought that briefcase was the key. He speculated that it might have contained the other half of the insurance settlement, Sherilyn's $32,000.
Ah, so the killers might have grabbed the briefcase, thinking they had all the money, and just missed the other bag hidden into the seat.
That's the theory. It would explain the financial contradiction. It wasn't that the killers didn't want money, it's that they thought they got it all and they were in a hurry.
So an extensive search starts. Helicopters, dogs, ground crews. For 4 years, they find nothing.
Nothing. The terrain is just that unforgiving. The only real lead they had in that initial search was from the tracking dogs.
What did they find?
They picked up a scent that led them from the truck about halfway up a nearby bluff. And this is significant because that location matches the GPS data from the last known photo on Bobby's phone, a picture he took of Madyson just before they vanished.
But the trail just stopped there.
It just went cold, terminated abruptly, as if they got into another vehicle or were taken from that spot. And one local resident did confirm seeing them that day, October 8th, near the truck site. He said he spoke to them, they asked a few questions about the area, and they seemed fine. Hours later, they were gone.
Before we go on, let's just remind everyone, don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and all major podcast platforms. Like, share, and comment. Please drop your review and rating.
It really helps us continue to bring you these stories.
So for 4 years, there's nothing but questions. And then, in November of 2013, a breakthrough.
A tragic one. 2 deer hunters were out in a very remote, densely wooded area called Smokestack Hollow, and they found 3 human skulls just lying face down on the ground.
How far was this from where the truck was found?
Incredibly close. Only about 2.7 to 3 miles away.
3 miles. After 4 years of searching with helicopters and dogs, they were that close the whole time.
It just speaks to how impenetrable that wilderness is. It's full of ravines and cliffs and incredibly thick brush. Without knowing exactly where to look, you could walk right past something. By July of 2014, dental records and DNA confirmed the inevitable. The remains belonged to Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madyson.
So they finally have them, but they still don't have answers. What was the official cause of death?
This is where it gets frustrating all over again. The medical examiner officially ruled the cause and manner of death for all 3 of them as undetermined.
Undetermined. Why?
Because of the condition of the remains. After 4 years exposed to the elements, there wasn't much left besides bones. Animal predation, weather, decomposition. It all made it impossible for them to say with scientific certainty how they died.
But there was something. There was one piece of physical evidence on Bobby's skull that strongly suggests foul play.
Yes. In the back of Bobby's skull, there was a small hole. Some reports describe it as being consistent with a 9mm bullet.
An execution-style shot.
It certainly looks that way. It's highly suggestive of a gunshot wound. But the medical examiner couldn't make that call definitively.
Why not? If there's a hole in the skull, it seems pretty clear.
The issue is a field of science called taphonomy. It's the study of what happens to remains after death. Without any soft tissue, it's very difficult to distinguish a clean bullet hole from damage that could have been caused post-mortem, by scavengers or even from a rock falling. So officially, it remains just a hole of unknown origin.
But the way they were found, that also points to murder, doesn't it?
It does. The fact that the skulls were all found close together, lying face down, that's more consistent with bodies being dumped or people being executed on site than it is with people who succumb to the elements. People who die of exposure are usually found in some kind of sheltered or curled position. This looked like a scene.
So the discovery of the bodies, in a way, just deepened the mystery. It provided this cruel closure, but 0 answers.
That's the perfect way to put it. It feels like the crime scene itself was designed to confuse, and it leaves us with these powerful but deeply ambiguous clues that point in multiple directions at once.
All right, so let's walk through the main theories, because the evidence for each one is compelling, but also full of contradictions. Let's start with murder-suicide.
The main evidence supporting this theory is, of course, the family's extreme psychological state. You have Sherilyn's bipolar disorder, the shared delusions about spirits, that hate letter, the trance-like state on the video. It all paints a picture of a potential folie à deux spiraling into a final tragic act.
The idea being that one of them, probably Sherilyn, decided the only way out of their suffering was to end it for everyone.
Exactly. That the trip into the mountains wasn't to look at land. It was a journey to a chosen final resting place. But the logistical problems with this theory are they're huge.
The first one being Bobby's physical condition.
Right. A 3-mile hike through that brutal, rugged terrain, would have been agony for him, maybe impossible given his chronic back pain. Why would a family planning their own deaths put themselves through that kind of ordeal?
And then there's the gun.
The missing gun. Sherilyn's .22 pistol, the presumed weapon, was never found. In almost every case of murder-suicide with a firearm, the weapon is found at the scene. It's incredibly rare for it not to be.
So for this theory to work, Sherilyn would have had to shoot Bobby and Madyson, then walk some distance away to hide the gun, and then return to die by some other means. It doesn't add up.
It's highly improbable. And again, why bring the dog just to leave her to starve? Why leave $32,000 in the truck? The evidence at the scene points away from a planned event and towards an interruption.
Which brings us to theory number 2. They were murdered by an outside party. This seems much more likely.
This is the theory most investigators favor. And there are a few key suspects or motives. The first is the family feud.
With Bobby's father, Bob Dean Sr., we know he threatened them. We know he had alleged ties to organized crime.
And we know he had a financial motive with the will. Now, the FBI did clear him based on an alibi, and he died a few months later. But that doesn't mean he didn't hire someone. He could have paid an associate to carry out the threats he'd been making.
An execution-style murder in the woods feels more like a professional hit than a family dispute that got out of hand.
It does. Then there's the drug angle. The area is known for meth labs. Bobby had apparently reported a meth lab to the police not long before they disappeared.
So they could have stumbled onto something they shouldn't have seen.
Oh.
Or maybe they were trying to buy or sell something and the deal went wrong.
It's possible. Even if the cash was from the settlement, just having that much money on hand in an area like that makes you a target.
But we come back to that same question. If it was a drug deal or a robbery, why was the money left behind?
And we come back to the same answer, the missing briefcase. The most logical homicide scenario is that the killers ambushed them, forced them from the truck at gunpoint, and took what they thought was the prize, the briefcase. They didn't know about the other cash hidden under the seat.
And that scenario fits all the evidence at the truck, doesn't it? The locked doors, the keys in the ignition, the coats and phones left behind. It all screams of a sudden, violent abduction.
It does. They were marched away from their vehicle, leaving Maisie and the hidden money behind, and taken to that secluded spot 3 miles away to be killed. It's a clean and terrifyingly plausible explanation.
And then there's the third theory, which is maybe the most specific and sinister. That this wasn't about money at all. This was a targeted hit by white supremacists.
This theory stems directly from that violent confrontation Sherilyn had with the handyman. He had a clear motive for revenge, and it was a motive based on hate, not greed.
A hate crime. That would perfectly explain why the $32,000 was ignored. The goal wasn't robbery, it was elimination.
Exactly, and this theory is bolstered by that anonymous phone call.
Right, the call Sherilyn's friend received after the disappearance was covered on national news.
The caller told the friend, Nikki Shainold, that the Jamisons were on a white supremacist hit list. And to prove they were legitimate, the caller gave a very specific detail about an insignia on Bobby's wedding ring that almost no one knew about.
So they had inside knowledge.
They did. The caller also claimed to have overheard the men involved saying they'd taken care of the Jamisons, and that one of the men had spoken inappropriately about Madyson. It's chilling.
When you combine that racist motive with the evidence that suggests an execution, the hole in the skull, the way the bodies were positioned, this theory seems to fit the known facts better than any other.
It provides a strong why. A professional hit, whether it was ordered by Bob Dean Sr. or carried out by associates of the handyman, explains the missing weapon, the march into the woods, and the irrelevance of the cash. It was a targeted murder. Sherilyn's own mother always believed they were killed by some kind of religious cult or hate group.
So we're left with this impossible puzzle. The evidence points in every direction at once. A family in a state of psychological collapse. A potential drug deal gone bad. A feud with a dangerous father. A targeted racist execution.
To recap the core facts, 3 people vanish. $32,000 is left behind. A dog is left to starve. An eerie video captures their final, bizarre hours at home. And 4 years later, their bones are found 3 miles away with a cause of death that is officially a mystery.
And here we are in 2025, and the case is completely cold. No arrests have ever been made. No conclusive motive has ever been established, and the key pieces of evidence, that brown briefcase and Sherilyn's handgun, have never been recovered.
The final image we have of the Jamison family will always be that silent, haunting footage from their security camera. Were they victims of their own broken minds, or were they hostages, being forced to act out a strange pantomime before being led to their deaths?
It's a question that may never be answered. Here's a final thought for you to consider. Maisie, the dog, she survived. She was a silent witness, trapped in that truck. She was the only living thing that was there for those crucial final moments, the moments that forced the Jamisons to leave everything behind and walk into the Oklahoma wilderness to their deaths.
If you or anyone listening has any information about the disappearance and deaths of Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madyson Jamison, please contact the Latimer County Sheriff's Office. Their number is 918-465-2161.
Don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of Crime on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Spreaker. Please like, share, and comment. Your reviews and ratings help us immensely. Thank you for listening.